Hello, welcome once again. I'm Imran Garda and you're in the stream. Today, blogger Yoani Sanchez on activism and reporting from Cuba, and after 6 months, education protests in Chile showed no signs of letting up. But is any real progress being made? Our digital producer Ahmed Shihabuddin is here as always, looking out for all your live feedback. Hi Ahmed.
Hey.
Joining him on the couch is Deepa Fernandez, a Knight Journalism Fellow at Stanford University and the founder of the People's Production House. It's a group that helps train citizen journalists. Deepa, welcome to the stream. Tell us a little bit about your work.
Thanks so much, Imran. It's great to be here. So I am a Knight Fellow this year out at Stanford University, and I'm working on a project that really is in line with a lot of the work that People's Production House does. We take people who are least likely to go to a J school to learn journalism the traditional way, people who are from communities least represented in the journalism corps, and we give them skills to be able to tell the stories of their communities in a professional and compelling way. And we've most recently, very excitingly, partnered with a new news entity that's about to launch. It's called newsmotion.org. Check it out on the web, newsmotion.org. And that's really bringing independent voices on a global scale together, reporters who can tell stories that are not being told. And it partners with something that People's Production House believes in a lot, which is digital media literacy. So it's creating a new kind of cadre of journalists out there. Okay,
looking forward to you chiming in with regards to topics. You've lived in Cuba. Looking forward to your opinion on Cuba as well as the education protests in Chile. Welcome once again, Deepa. Now, of course, this show is all about you, our community. So if you have a story you want to share, you can tweet it to us. Let me call up our Twitter page. There it is, the stream. Use the hashtag AJStream and you could appear on the show.
I'm Latoya Peterson. I'm the editor and owner of racialicious.com. I'm an activist, a writer, a blogger, a radio host, personality, gamer, and I'm in the stream.
Now, Cuban blogger Yoani Sanchez has received international acclaim for her writings about life inside Cuba and has been an outspoken critic of the Cuban government. Earlier, the stream had the chance to speak with her about online activism and how the wave of change from the Arab Spring is influencing the Cuban government. Take a look. Let's give you a taste of what she had to say to us.
El gobierno cubano también ha mirado con atención la lección de África del Norte. Puedo decir que desde que comenzaron pues las primeras protestas populares en Túnez a principios de este año, el gobierno cubano ha recrudecido, por ejemplo, la vigilancia, la observación sobre líderes cívicos, sobre figuras de la oposición, ha aumentado el control sobre las llamadas telefónicas, ha pues apretado la mano en todo lo que tiene que ver con la vigilancia y el control sobre la tecnología. Por ejemplo, pues se ha postergado una vez más la posibilidad de conectar la isla a un cable de fibra óptica que probablemente podría traer internet para conectar masivamente a los cubanos, y eso se ha postergado por temor, pienso yo, entre otras cosas, entre otras razones, a que 11 millones o 10 millones de internautas cubanos de pronto en el ciberespacio puedan comenzar a confluir, a acercarse, a intercambiar opiniones, convocarse también para cambiar las cosas. Entonces, pienso que la represión, mayor control, ha sido lo que la policía política ha sacado en claro después de los sucesos de África del Norte. Sin embargo, tengo esperanza. Soy una persona con mucho optimismo a largo plazo, aunque vienen momentos bien difíciles, vienen momentos de mayor control, de mayor supervisión, de mayor intromisión estatal sobre nuestras vidas. Hay que esperar incluso pues una respuesta violenta por parte de las fuerzas del orden, si acaso los cubanos pues quisiéramos hacer protestas pacíficas en las calles, pero creo que al final pues la inconformidad, el sentido crítico se va a imponer y los cubanos vamos a lograr esa tan ansiada apertura democrática.
Okay, there you have it. That's an excerpt from our interview with Cuban blogger Yoani Sanchez. Deepa, I know you've lived in Cuba, reported from it in the past. Yoani saying greater repression, greater control from the government over its people. What do you think?
You know, it's interesting, and I think, you know, no one can ever say, and when we look at Cuba, you know, there's such extreme poles. my experience living in Cuba and reporting from Cuba, there is absolutely censorship, and I'm sure that the Cuban government is feeling the pressure looking at what's happening around the world. But you know, I think we also need to look at the many different communities inside of Cuba who maybe don't hold as an extreme view as Yoani Sanchez, and I met and reported their stories for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. I was never censored. I told stories of people who didn't like the Cuban regime at all. I told stories of people who did like the Cuban regime, didn't experience that kind of censorship, but that's not to say that it isn't there. And I think one of the most interesting things, my own sister, Sujatha Fernandez, has spent a lot of time living and reporting and researching in Cuba, and she's looked at the hip-hop community, who are a really interesting almost group of people who have shown that there is a different way to have dissent. So while it might not, and they're very critical of many aspects of Cuban life, yet they do so inside of the state apparatus. They even receive state support. Many Cuban rappers are actually paid to be Cuban rappers. And it's very interesting. My sister's actually just written a book called Close to the Edge, and I really encourage people to get that book, because it really paints a very nuanced picture of how dissent is happening inside of Cuba that's not as extreme as you know, taking to the streets and being shut down, or you know, it's happening inside of the arts in a very powerful way.
Interesting take on that. Thanks for adding a layer of complexity to that. Well, you can watch our full interview with Yoani Sanchez on our website, stream.aljazeera.com. And here's Ahmed with your feedback.
So there's no denying that social media is accelerating and amplifying grassroots movements across the world. And after this summer's Tottenham riots, the British government suggested a ban on social media to prevent the spread of violence. Well, a new study finds that more than 2/3 of adults in England would support the shutdown of Facebook, Twitter, and BlackBerry Messenger. Now today in London, this right here was the scene. Let's take a look. Thousands of students are marching against rising tuition, financial aid cuts, and recent initiatives to privatize universities in order to make them more profitable. Now, several days before the protests, London police sent hundreds of letters to anti-cuts activists, warning them that there would be consequences to protesting. Now, right here we have one of those letters. Let me just show it to you. One of the third, or I think the fourth paragraph, it says a criminal conviction could impact on employment and educational opportunities, your ability to travel abroad, and applications for insurance cover. So trying to prevent protests there. Now this seems to have only perhaps galvanized the movement. We have Owen Jones 84 on Twitter right here saying, lots of protesters expressing fear of exercising a basic democratic right for fear of the police response, and he thinks it's disturbing in a democracy to have that happening. Now, here are some images that are circulating online documenting the protests. Right here, this photo suggests that cutting military spending and using the funds for education instead and healthcare would be more important. We also see some activists were pitching tents in Trafalgar Square where they faced off with police. They're replicating the strategy of the Occupy movement. This last photo right here is kind of poking fun at the tube station in London, Shoreditch, for those of you familiar with it, but it also says, "Sod the rich," which has been posted on one of the helmets of the police officers. Now, we also received a Storify from the socialist website Counterfire that features reports of arrests, photos, and videos from today's events. You can see this is their reporting of it. Now, we often here solicit and ask for you to send us Storify. So remember, you too can create your own stories and share it with us here at the stream. And if you don't know how to do it, we've created a little video, so watch this and you'll know how.
As a narrative tool for the social media age. Log in with your Twitter account. Search what people are saying on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, pretty much anywhere on the web. Then rearrange them any way you like. Add your own explanations and thoughts, and publish your story for the world to see. Share those stories with us, and they, and you, might just wind up in the stream.
Now, for 6 months, protesters from the student-led education reform movement in Chile have been demanding free tuition in a country that is home to some of the highest university fees in the world. If you haven't been following it, here's a look at a video from a student media group out of the University of Chile. So this is protest footage set to Chilean rapper Ana Tiju's song Shock, which is of course a reference to neoliberal policies criticized in the book The Shock Doctrine. Now protesters say those for-profit principles are at the foundation of the education system's problems. Some say recent vandalism and violence between protesters and police are undermining the movement's credibility. Now, Chilean authorities are using a controversial state security law to punish those involved in the clashes, similarities with what Ahmed was talking about in London. And public approval for both the protesters and President Sebastián Piñera is dropping, interestingly. Now, joining us now via Skype to help us explain this is Elizabeth Rivera, a citizen journalist in Santiago who's been covering the student movement for Global Voices online, and to represent the government side in this is Congressman José Edwards of Chile's ruling National Renewal Party. He's joining us via Skype from Valparaiso. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Looking forward to this discussion. Congressman Edwards, if I can read you one of the tweets that has come through to us very recently, as we put out this shout out for people to actually respond to the topic. Somebody said, stop the criminalization and repression of the student movement in Chile. I take it you disagree that there's any criminalization and repression taking place?
Well, hello. Thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I really appreciate it. And look, I think we have to make first of all, a big distinction between the students and those who peacefully are demonstrating their ideas, or the differences with the system we have in place, and those who use these public demonstrations in order to create disorder. And let me give you a couple of numbers so we can put this into context. I heard that the government supposedly is criminalizing the public protest, but let me tell you that in these 6 months of protest, we've had 600 policemen injured, and the police have taken to prison to 1,800 protesters, mainly those who are using hats to cover hoods, to cover their faces. And today we have only 5 people out of the 6 months, only 5 people who are standing trial. The other 1,795 people were out and released the same day. So I really don't think there's a criminalization of the student protest. I think what we're trying to do is just to separate public demonstrations and student movement, students' ideas, which, by the way, many of them I support. I just finished my school, I'm very young. I participated in the student movement. I was part of the CONFECH, which is the union of all the student federations in 2001. So I understand what it is complained, and I think they have reasons to complain, and we all understand that.
Okay, Congressman, so let's separate it then. Let's take away the violence. Let's take away those who have attacked police officers and look at what the students who are sincerely protesting, those that, as you said, there is a separation. So those who are sincerely protesting for greater education rights, for the right to free tertiary education, for those who are saying that the education system is broken. Do you agree with them that the education system is broken and it needs to be fixed, and that you will try to help them in addressing that?
I think the educational system have very big problems. And one of the big problems is the cost of the tuition. The tuition fees are completely in the skies. It's very, very expensive to study in Chile. And that is a real problem. So I think they do have many concerns that are absolutely right. And the student aid packages that we are providing as a government are really, really bad. And let me explain you why. We have basically 3 systems: a scholarship system, and then we have 2 packages of student loans. One student loan which you pay once you finish school, depending on how much you earn. But there's another system which has 365,000 students in debt, where when you finish, you have to pay a fixed amount, and that fixed amount is really high. So it's very unfair for them to have to pay such amounts of money after they finish. And usually what happens is that in your normal working life, sometimes you have a job and sometimes you are unemployed. but this system forces you to pay even if you're unemployed. So that's unfair, and that's one of the main complaints. I absolutely agree with that. So what we have to do is to change this system for a system where you have scholarships and student loans who depend how much you pay in what you earn when you are a professional.
I think you'd have viewers in the United States who have student loans still to pay off over decades who would agree with you that the system here is broken as well.
And that's a problem.
Okay, let's bring in Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you are close to the pulse of the people who have taken to the streets over the past 6 months. If they had to hear the congressman now on the program saying that he and others are sincerely trying to address the issue, would they believe him?
Well, I think actions speak more than words. And up until now, there hasn't been a very deep solution, at least as a proposal. And I know, I mean, all of the government has proposed right now is very important, and I think it'll solve some of the things, but the root problem hasn't been addressed. And at least that's what people or netizens are saying online. And also they're worried about this law, this controversial law that is being used to stop the violence, which nobody, not the students or any other people, agree upon, to be used against the students in a wider way. Like it has been seen in all the student protests that police has used tear gas and also water cannons to disperse very peaceful protests. So yes, I can see where the government's coming from, but I see also that the debate online goes both ways because there haven't been solutions, and also the actions of the police have been a little bit overmeasured. At least that's what they've been saying.
Congressman Edwards, if I can just refer to a point you brought up, criticizing perhaps some people in the protest movement who are resorting to violence. Early on, several months back, we remember, and I'm sure you remember, I have a photo of the kissing protest that Chilean students did in order to send a message that they really were there peacefully. And it was more about love and unity for their country and themselves. But anyway, we have a comment coming in from Carlos Quiroz. He says, his friends in Chile, including Peruvian migrants, tell him how repressive Chilean society is, not just by the laws, but that there's a double standard of secrecy, elitism, and racism. He goes on to say that the government or the Pinochet-era legislation are justifying the incarceration of organizers, students, immigrants, dissidents. And then the last sentence is, Chile is today a satellite country of the US and UK in many aspects. Do you see where he's coming from with these comments?
Well, let me answer all the questions.
I'm sorry, there's a delay on the on your
question. Go ahead, please.
Okay. So first of all, I disagree with Elizabeth that the government is not doing anything. Let me just give you some examples. We're creating a quality control education agency. We're creating a state-led organization to monitor the non-profit nature of public and privately owned higher education. We're providing subsidies to lower up to 40% of how much a student have to pay once they finish school and they have to start paying their loans. We're also promoting free education for everyone who belongs to the 40% poorest of the country. So I think the government is doing and taking many measures that go to the heart of the problem. The problem here is that we have 1.1 million students and we have a developing country that cannot pay education for all. We would love to have free education, but please, I think we have to start focusing the resources we have to the poor people before, and then to the rich people, because the rich people can pay education, so we have to focus the resources.
Okay.
Second, I understand completely the comment that the Peruvian person that you mentioned was making. I think we do have a society that is very racist. Let me tell you that I represent the only district in the country where the majority of my district is of Mapuche descent. So I really come across with race issues, and we have to work on that as a society because we haven't been able to forget about that racism that we have.
One of the proposals on the table to pay for some of this, and Elizabeth, I'd love to get your feedback and what people in the streets, the protesters are saying about this, is to privatize. And I think, you know, Chile, when you look at the Allende government and its socialist policies, had nationalized quite a lot of industry. The move to say privatize and sell off, I think the proposal on the table is to sell off water and make that private. Wouldn't that have ripple effects for the very poor people in other ways?
It's to sell 5 state-owned water treatment companies. That's
exactly.
Right,
yes. So if you
no,
sell...
that is not correct. Sorry that I interrupt, but that's not correct.
Why is it not? Enlighten us, sir.
Because that was a comment that made one minister 3 or 4 days ago, completely out of the blue, and quickly after that, the finance minister and the minister of the interior contradicted minister. So we're not doing that. That's not the idea
So,
of...
sir, how will you pay for these
of,
changes then? What are the proposals on the table to pay for what the students are asking for?
Well, first of all, what we would like to do is to fix the student loan packages of aid that we're providing. We have to change the second... We have scholarship student aids that you pay regarding how much you earn, and then the other type of student loans that you have to pay a fixed amount. We have to fix that problem there. And then we have to focus the resources towards all those who need education for free because they cannot pay it today. And that's the way that we are proposing it in the new budget law that we're discussing in the Congress.
So there would be no privatization?
No, that's completely out of the question. And let me tell you something. There is not a single for-profit university in Chile. The problem is another thing. We have a law which is not being fulfilled. There are private universities who are supposed to be non-profit, but they are acting as a for-profit. But there's a law that prohibits that. And the center-left coalition that governed this country for 20 years did not enforce that law. And that's one of the problems we have today.
Okay, Congressman, let's bring in Elizabeth here, because to piggyback on Deepa's point, the issue of nationalization has definitely come up. Many of the students want to nationalize the copper mines. Oh, I think we've lost her there. Well, then I think I'm going to address this to the Congressman. Congressman, many of the students want to nationalize the copper mines. Now, we know that was probably the last thing done under Salvador Allende before the US-backed military coup that brought Pinochet into power and to put Chile into that phase that made it very famous, probably one of its darkest ever phases. Is this opening up ideological wounds now, where it becomes much more than education?
And that's one of the problems. Why it has been so hard to keep a dialogue with the students is that once you set a round table to discuss issues about education with them, they brought another type of issues, and they want to change, they want to do a tax reform, they want to nationalize the productive means, and they keep considering more and more changes to the system. And let me tell you something, if you don't want an agreement, what you do is to ask for so much that it's impossible for the government to do it all at once. So that's one of the problems, that they're asking things that are completely different to education. And I think that's not possible. We have to focus on education and solve that problem. And then we have to move on and then consider another issues. But the people that we have to discuss this, it's not for tax reform. We don't have to discuss that with the students. We have to discuss it with the society as a whole.
I just wanted to add in there, you know, we have a lot of tweets, and it's important to note that people are drawing parallels between different movements. We just did a segment about the student movement against privatization of universities. In London, it seems that Colombian students are now, according to this tweet, forgive me, it's not opening, by News Motion, actually, this tweet saying that Colombian students are standing in solidarity with those in the UK as well.
But I can listen.
Oh, perhaps we lost the guest.
Okay, listen, we're going to continue this in the post-show. So, Congressman, stay with us, and we're going to try and get Elizabeth back up for the post-show. Stream.aljazeera.com is where it's at. They'll address what Ahmed brought up there. Deepa, for the sake of the TV viewers, thank you very much for joining us. Some very good questions there, better than mine, actually. So, well done. Deepa Fernandez, thanks for joining us on the stream. Everybody stay with us for the post-show on stream.aljazeera.com. Now, on tomorrow's show, we look at the difficult conditions faced by migrant workers in Russia, including issues related to xenophobia, ultranationalism, neo-Nazism, and downright racism. So make sure to tune in for that. Post-show on stream.aljazeera.com. Watch us there. Welcome back to the post show on stream.aljazeera.com. Ahmed, it's hard enough as it is trying to pack everything into the show.
Yes.
Made even harder when Skype keeps dropping out and coming back in. So feel free.
The point I was trying to make is a lot of people are starting to draw attention to, you could say, a global student uprising where they're trying to fight for the rights to education and, you know, to affordable education. We have this website was just sent to us, showing that the Colombian University Students Union, which you can see right there, is sending a warm embrace to the British students, which we're demonstrating today. So, what do you think, Elizabeth? Do you think that you know, it's been 6 months, perhaps there hasn't been much progress in Chile, but do you think that, you know, having support and solidarity abroad will embolden or, you know, will help the case for those in Chile?
Well, I think it will. I mean, as we have seen in several other uprisings, support and people, you know, fighting for the same things just legitimizes your own fight. So I think, you know, Colombians and now the UK students, all that, you know, come up and just state the same issues, and it just makes our case stronger.
Congressman, this military draft of 18-year-olds, tens of thousands of 18-year-old Chileans are now being drafted into the military. Many of the protesters are saying that this is a move by the government as a direct response to the student movement over the past 6 months. Are they right?
I don't think there's any military drop to the police. If that's what you're saying. I think the police is trying to control the public demonstrations. And as I tell you, every single demonstration we've had so far, we have to make a separation between those students who are rightfully and lawfully and using the right to complain about something that they believe is unfair, and in many regards I agree, to those who are covering their heads and they are using cocktail Molotov bombs or they are burning.
Who do you think's in the minority or majority when it comes to this separation that you're talking about, of those who are violent and those who are peaceful?
60% of the Chilean population want the public demonstrations to finish. And the reason why they want that is because they see too much violence from the people who are not students.
Okay. Okay, Deepa, coming in here, just looking at some of those statistics regarding that were brought up by the congressman. The research group Adimark GFK says that support for the student movement has fallen to 67%. And Sebastián Piñera's approval, interestingly, is down almost as low as it's ever been at 31%. So I know we can't read too much into statistics, but the trend saying that there's the trend saying that there's lack of support for both from those that have been polled. Deepa, why do you think that's the case?
You know, it's interesting. I think in some ways you also need to analyze the fact that, you know, people have been out on the street for 6 months. That's a long time. You know, the Occupy movements which have sprung up in this country, you know, they're coming into the 6-7 week mark, and, you know, we'll see how much support they maintain.
Is there a sense of apathy that comes in then from the general public?
You know, I would almost spin it around and say, you know, and maybe Elizabeth can speak to this, but if you've been out on the street for 6 months and you're still going out when there is very little movement on a political level where your demands are being met, but yet you're still going out, what is it that is keeping those folks from going out day after day? And
yeah, well, let's pose that to Elizabeth. Elizabeth?
Well, I think the time where the students are going out to express what they're fighting for is done, and now they're going out to press the government for an action. So I think it's not that the student movement is losing momentum, but it's changing the shift. So now it's all about pushing the government to come up with more solutions, with solutions that got to the heart of the problem. And as Congressman said, I mean, people have seen that some solutions have come around, but they're not into the heart. At least that's what people is reading. So that's why they keep pushing, and that's why they keep occupying.
I don't know if you heard, your line had dropped out, but the congressman actually said, Elizabeth, that the students are asking for too much. They're asking for big systemic things like nationalize certain industries, and that's not related to education. How do the students respond to that?
Well, I mean, I've seen, at least online, some that they have also said, yeah, we have committed some mistakes, and but we need to keep focusing on what's important, and that's the quality of education and accessibility of education. So I think that, yeah, they've committed some mistakes, like, trying to ask for everything to change. But the heart of the problem is there, and that's why people are still going out, and it's just time to focus again and try to get solutions.
I'd love for you to comment. If I could just throw something to you, Congressman. We have this tweet from Sidney Schneider saying he's giving perhaps a suggestion to the government, saying, "Hey, Senator or Congressman, perhaps sell a couple of warplanes and send a few kids to college," which is a cynical response. But then we have Mr. Brupan on Twitter saying, "How about increasing taxes to multinational corporations?" And I wonder what you think of that.
Well, let me, okay, so about increasing taxes, I think we have to study what kind of taxes we want to increase. I'm open for increasing taxes in some places and to lowering taxes in other places to have a better control of how the society is paying for the needs that we have as a society. But let me go back to the idea of free education. When we had free education in the 1970s and the 1980s, only 4% of the students from 18 years old until 23 years old could attend university. Now that we have a university that people have to pay, we have, I don't know how to say, coverage of 45%. 45% of the youngsters from 18 years old to 23 years old are attending university. So the idea of making a free university is something that we have to study that. Why? Because how many students are going to be able
But Congressman, you've had 6 months to study it now. People have been on the streets for 6 months.
Yeah, and let me give you, when students today, the CONFET students who represent only students who attend public universities, who represent only 30% of the students, what they want is free education by means of subsidies to the universities itself. But they want subsidies to universities who are public, not private. So basically what they are saying is free education for them, not free education for the other 70%. And what we are saying, the government, is, look, what we have to do is to give the subsidies and the scholarships to those who need it the most, no matter whether they attend a public university or a private university. And that's an ideological problem, because what they want is a completely public university. What we're saying is, look, let's have the system that provides a better quality, and let's help those who really need it. And believe me, I don't think that rich people need a scholarship. Rich people have to pay, no matter whether they attend a public university or a private university.
Okay, Congressman José Edwards and Elizabeth Rivera, thank you very much for chiming into this debate, for giving us some insight into the situation in Chile with the student protests. Great pleasure. We hope to speak to you.
May I make a final statement?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so there's a situation going on in Chile, but Chile is a country that is growing. Chile is not a country in debt. Chile is a country with the lowest unemployment rate we've had in 15 years. So this is we are not Greece. Chile is growing strong, and I'm sure that we're going to be able to pass these problems, and we're going to be able to fix education, and we're going to have peace in the next month.
Okay, I think to be fair, I'm going to have to give Elizabeth 20 or 30 seconds to make a final statement of her own. Elizabeth?
Well, yeah, well, I don't think anyone, at least netizens, agree on violence, and we all support a new education reform, just because education is the cornerstone of any society. And as Congressman said, I mean, if we have a very strong educational system and peace, that can drive Chile's growth. It's just about, getting there. And I think as long as we keep that direction, we'll reach, there'll be some agreement.
Both of you are optimists at heart, José Edwards and Elizabeth Rivera. Thank you very much for joining us from Santiago and Valparaiso, respectively, discussing the issue in Chile. Now, we've also got some other stories that we've been keeping tabs on, literally and figuratively. Ahmed, tell us about those.
Yes, it's true. Just a quick roundup. We have Mi Panama Transparente. That's my horrible attempt at a Spanish accent. It's an online platform that's trying to fill the gap that was left behind in terms of the lack of investigative reporting in newspapers and television stations in Panama. And in the process, the website organizers, as you can see on this website, are saying they're planning new digital tools to really allow citizens to participate in these sorts of investigations of homicides, corruption, sexual abuse, and so on and so forth. We also have a story coming out of actually the US. The Supreme Court is apparently right now getting ready to hear oral arguments as to whether it's legal for the US government to track US citizens with GPS vehicle trackers. And this week, a young man in California found 2 on his car. So even though it's not been, figured as to whether this is legal or not, a lot of people are saying it's an invasive technology, and so the police and the FBI would be able to track your literally every move you make.
Well, most people post where they are on Facebook and Twitter anyway.
It's true. I mean, or if you're on Foursquare, so maybe it doesn't matter, but we're waiting to hear back. And then the last story, just very quickly, is Occupy Nicosia is in Cyprus now. Apparently, there have been groups of both Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots that have been heading to the UN borders on the north and south, from both the north and south, and they're trying to support what is being called a bi-communal event. So there's the official page right here. This is the photo page, and we'll be following this story as well.
Yeah, and we can vote them up or down on Reddit.
Perhaps you could vote these stories. Yes, that's true. I forgot. If you go to reddit.com/r/AJStream, you can vote for these stories, and if you vote enough, perhaps we'll cover them at length next time.
Yeah, it's good for us to gauge whether you have an appetite for them or not, but those are 3 from among many stories that we're following. Deepa, thanks for joining us. Very quickly, did you enjoy it?
That was fun. Thanks, Imran.
Okay, good. Hope to have you on the Orange Couch.
Love to come back.
Again in a not too distant future. Deepa Fernandez joining us there. Ahmed, see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we're talking the issue of migrants in Russia. We hope you'll join us for that. Bye-bye.